Walz going on a weekend show over the weekend on Fox and just imploding under the pressure because, you know, when Shannon Bream asks the question, whoo, scary. He doesn't know what to say here. And it's a basic question that he ought to be well informed on, except that I don't think he fundamentally believes in the First Amendment, nor does his running mate, Kamala Harris. So when Shannon asked this question, he was just caught stumbling.
You've said there's no guarantee to free speech for misinformation or hate speech. But first of all, Supreme Court very clear in a unanimous 2017 decision that hate speech is protected. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be protected, stuff none of us like to hear. But more importantly, who gets to decide on the issue of what misinformation is?
Look, the First Amendment is foundational. It's something I spent my whole life, the vice president, and I think most Americans are clear on this. The point being on this, we're seeing censorship coming in the form of book bannings in different places. We're seeing it attempts in schools. The issue on this is the hate speech and the protected hate speech. Speech that's aimed at creating violence, speech that's aimed at threats to individuals. And that's what we're talking about in this. And the decision on that, society decides on a lot of this. The idea of someone going on and threatening someone's life or a child's life online, I don't think any of your viewers think that is something that should be acceptable.
I mean, there's a distinction, you would say, though, between something like a threat and misinformation.
Oh, certainly. And that's what we're talking about. And I think the idea of making sure that folks understand, are good consumers of that, those are the decisions they make. But I've always defend your First Amendment rights, defend your right to disagree on every case. That robust discussion has to happen. And that's why I'm so opposed to book banning. That's why in Minnesota we banned the practice of book banning. Let you make the decision of what you're going to read, whether you find it objectionable or not. The difference is threats, that type of speech.
Okay.
Oh boy. Of course, don't forget. Do you remember when it was hate speech to say that coronavirus may have originated out of the lab in Wuhan, China, where they were actually working with it? That was hate speech, apparently, right? Because you were somehow characterizing China in a bad way. Like, who's deciding? And you heard her, you know, the Supreme Court, we don't like hate speech. Not one bit, but the Supreme Court upheld that that is still a freedom of speech issue. These people don't understand it. They don't respect it. And the idea now is, if you disagree with anything this administration says, you're part of the problem. You're part of the hate speech. If you're not on board with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, it's misinformation. If they don't like the question a reporter asked them in the briefing room, it's misinformation. Listen to this one.
To the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous, because then when folks on the ground hear that, they may not want to ask for the help that they need. That is there for them. That's our focus here.
But President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for people in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is, your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you don't, yes, it's misinformation.
Is there money to send to Lebanon right now?
I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in the area, and I just shared with you that people are deciding not to.
Okay, it goes on. All right, I've actually, if you guys watch the show regularly, I've played the soundbite a lot because it's just crazy. At some point, Peter Ducey looks at her from Fox and he's like, so wait a second, if you don't like the question, you can't just say, if you don't like my question, that it's misinformation or disinformation. And I found it kind of funny because on Friday or Thursday, CNN was trying to talk about FEMA and they were trying to be so cautious, like on eggshells about how they talked about FEMA because they're afraid to actually say that FEMA doesn't have any more money because, you know, that would be misinformation, disinformation, even though Mayorkas told us they were out of cash and wouldn't be able to actually move forward if there were more hurricanes coming. And that was before Milton.
Yeah, and we should say from the outset here that FEMA does have the money that it needs for its immediate concerns. That's according to the White House, that's according to the FEMA director. But there are other pots of money that they are concerned about, and specifically when it comes to the Small Business Administration. They're responsible for providing low interest loans, not only to small businesses, but to homeowners and renters as well, who are trying to recover from this storm. And what President Biden says is they only have a few weeks of funding left and they need more money very urgently. Now, FEMA is
very urgently. Careful, careful, careful. You're going to get some noses out of joint there in the Kamala campaign. You may not get her for the next interview. CNN, watch out. Access journalism at its best, ladies and gentlemen.